Well, Kelly Jackson, I knew Kathy Helbig was great, but I didn't know how great she was.
It's going to be a good show.
Until I saw her work, a friend of mine, she works some magic. And kudos to you and Lori for pulling off. I mean, it's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot. People are saying right now it's really hard to be a buyer's agent, which it absolutely is, because it's frustrating and time consuming, and now with gas prices on top of it, it's definitely a challenge. But it's no walk in the park to be a listing agent either. I mean,
well, the thing that I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. The thing that she said to me was she could the number of offers they got, you could tell which was an experienced agent, which was a new agent, which agent was clearly doing it wrong, which was then hurting their own buyer's chances.
How many times have I said that on the show about make sure you're working with somebody that knows what they're doing, because your agent is your liaison. Yeah. And what that agent presents, you don't know. You're a layperson. That's like me going to an accountant or attorney and expecting to know everything and telling the accountant and attorney exactly what to do. Yeah. That doesn't happen. So the real estate agent is the one that's crafting this offer. And just like you said, you can take half of them and just go, boop, set them aside because of the way something was written. A big problem is just ambiguity. Yeah. They're wanting to try to get some sort of a point across, but they don't give a beginning, middle, and end thought to it, and so it leaves it too wide open.
And whereas in a not as busy market, you might work with that agent.
Correct.
This time you don't have time because you got 6 other offers. Right. 3 of them are really good.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think with that one, maybe we had 12 or something that we were looking at, and then it's get rid of the big mistakes first, and obviously the lowest terms get set aside. Right. But sometimes you'd be surprised you can get people to come up. So that's another thing I run across in training, is that a lot of agents just think, all right, this is what we got, pick one. And you don't. You have to just pick one. You can go, well, I like this about this one and this about this one, so let's call these people and say, here's the challenges with yours that's holding me up. Will you do this or that? Yeah. And you would be surprised how many of them, just like you said, because they didn't realize, they didn't necessarily mean for it to look that way, or they didn't necessarily think about the other option that we present to them. Yeah. They are usually jumping to the occasion to change their offer and tighten it up. Yeah, yeah.
The other thing they said was the professionalism of you and Lori were off the charts.
Thanks. We make a good team.
Yeah.
We all do.
But I mean, it's because you're selling your house. Yes. And it's a crazy time, and you want to feel safe, and you want to be trusted, and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Yes, and we literally train every single week. We sit down and talk about scenarios, role play, objections, how to craft offers to make them tighter, whether it be for a seller or a buyer, because I also notice that there's agents that are used to working in the old atmosphere of real estate. Right. And in that case, I'm representing my buyer and I'm representing my seller, and you just got that whole mindset of, no, you've got to do everything to protect this buyer. So a lot of buyer agents, it's taken a while for them to realize, yes, I want to protect my buyer, but too much protection in the buyer in this atmosphere is not going to even get your foot in the door. Right. So you need to have these candid conversations with your buyers and say, listen, this part worries me, this part I think you've got some leeway in. What can we do to make this an offer that the seller likes? Because usually you're like, everything is rah-rah buyer, but you've got to take the glasses off and put them on for the seller now and go, I've got the world's at my feet. Right. So if I'm going to pick one of these, you got one shot. Yeah. Which one am I going to pick?
Well, the other thing was, I think the comment was, they didn't take advantage of the buyers, right? Right. Because you can turn the screws on the buyers to the point where they're like, forget it.
Well, that's the thing. There's a fine line. So we were talking about, there's a couple of things, a lot goes down around the inspection paragraph. Right. And that's where a lot of mistakes are made. And there's a fine line of just squeezing them so tight that they're going to freak out. Right. Versus, here's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to validate that you're not a flaky buyer, right. That you're not acting emotionally, that you're going to get into this situation and then a week from now have buyer's remorse and back out. Right. So if everybody understands that's all we're trying to do, and we're not trying to get you to buy something and bamboozle you because there's something wrong with it, we're hiding it, so we want to give you no options. Absolutely not. Yeah. Because the thing is, a buyer, if somebody doesn't want to close on a house, they're not gonna show up at closing, whether it's contractual or not,
Right,
you know,
right,
so,
right.
you know, it's just really, really interesting how you can craft that language too far, and I've seen people go too far, but you also were cognizant of the little bitty loopholes
Right.
that are in there in certain provisions for buyers that we have to close.
So let's talk about the inspection for a second. If somebody bought a house 2-3 years ago, and now they're selling the house, the inspection, I know it's not, you know, things might have happened in those 2 years, but
Right.
that's a pretty good,
Unlikely that there's something
representation that-
major that's
right.
come up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's another thing that we coach our agents is look and see when's the last time the house sold, and then ask for, hey, is there any way I can see that old inspection? Because if you know you're up against 10 or 20 other people, you know a bunch of those people are gonna go in and say, as is, we're gonna lower our inspection periods, or we're only gonna do inspection for informational purposes only, and some of them might even say no inspections at all.
right.
So for you to be able to even think about doing that, if you can get your hands on a little bit of information, that's gonna help you one way or the other to know, all right, I'm comfortable with taking some of that language out or taking all of
Yeah.
that language out,
Yeah.
as the case may be.
Explain to me a inspection for informational purposes only.
So that's supposed to be, all right, we're not going to take away our ability to do inspections. So we still wanna bring our guy in, just to make sure everything's cool. But we're not gonna ask for anything, we're just wanting to look over the house. The problem is, people write that in, but then they leave in all the language that's in the regular part of the contract that says there's 10 days to negotiate anything that comes up as repairs. So that's one big mistake people are making right now.
Oh, yeah.
The intent is, we're trying to say, we're not gonna ask you for anything, but then they have all these rights still to be able to do it. And then another thing is, you know, people will say as is, and if any of that language is still there, they can come back and change their mind and say, well, you know, we're dealing with one right now. Well, I didn't realize the roof might need some repairs.
Right. Well, right.
You know,
What part of as is didn't
As
you understand?
is, informational purposes only, you know, so, but there are provisions in the contract, depending on if you keep them in or not, that sellers need to be aware. If they say that and they take away the negotiating period to do that, there's another provision in the contract that says the buyer can terminate and walk away. So you're not scot-free by
Right.
saying informational purposes only or as is, if that other clause is still in there. So there's ways to, you know, put some parameters around that and stuff. Definitely, that's probably our biggest issue, is the inspection clause that people don't understand and don't know how to strategically rework that
Right.
to either, as the buyer, make it attractive, or as the seller, tighten up all the loopholes.
And that's where you have an inexperienced agent still
Yes.
trying to learn the business, or
Yeah.
living back in 1992 or something.
And the other one is the finance clause. So 2 years, up until 2 years ago, if you had a buyer that's getting a loan, it was always customary that you wrote in 30 days for a loan approval, and buyer, it's contingent upon buyer receiving, you know, a loan approval. And if they don't, they're out scot-free. They get their money back, they walk away. So the seller would sit for 30 days and go, gosh, I hope that guy was telling the truth when he filled out his loan application, because you don't know him from Adam.
Right.
So that has now changed a lot, because there's a lot of buyers out there that, yes, they still have to get financing, but they're coming around to the idea that, why do I keep writing it's contingent on me getting it for the seller? Why am I making this the seller's problem?
Right.
It shouldn't be the seller's problem. If I know I've got a good credit score, and I know I don't have skeletons in my closet, and I know I'm not gonna go buy a car the week before I'm supposed to close,
Right.
although don't go buy a car the week before I'm supposed to, then I know I'm not gonna have a problem. So
Right.
I'll bear my own risk, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and I'm not gonna ask you to make this contingent on financing. That does not make it a cash deal.
What about the appraisal, right? This, because somebody has a asking price of $300,000 and it goes for $350.
Right.
How does the appraiser know it's
So
worth
that's
what
why
it's
a
worth?
lot of those factors that we were reviewing for hours the other day on that contract are, the appraisal there's two things to it. You can, either your contract is contingent upon an appraisal or not. If you're getting financing, your financing is contingent upon an appraisal
Right.
with you and your lender. It
Because the
doesn't
bank won't
necessarily
want to
mean
lend you
it's-
for money if
Right.
the house isn't worth it.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's contingent with the seller. So the buyer can bear that risk and say, okay, it's okay if it appraises for less than what I'm buying it for, which can happen in this market right now because people are escalating quite high. Then the buyer has to bring not only their down payment, and their closing costs, they have to also bring in that difference. So if it appraised for $15,000 less, they're bringing in their down payment, their $15,000 gap for the appraisal being low, and their closing costs. Not everybody has that much money sitting around. So that's the things you need to talk about to decide, can you afford to do that? So when we look at contracts that then go not contingent on financing or doesn't have an appraisal rider contingency on it, and we see they're putting 3.5% down as their only money down, that's a little bit of a red flag. Like, can they really come up with a difference? Because they're not even putting much down payment down. Or you've got a finance amount that says they're putting 50% down. You know, well, if it's shy, they can always adjust their 50 to maybe 40,
right?
And then they can come up with a gap difference. So these are all the things you've got to uncover before you just pick a winner.
But if so, the house is listed at 300, sells for 350, then that goes into the hopper as a
350 comp.
As a 350 comp.
Correct.
So that's raising all the other houses in the neighborhood.
Correct. But here's what you have to keep in mind. I have this conversation daily with sellers. That house listed at 300 though. So the buyers are the one that escalated, or somebody. It could have been a one-off. It could be because their mom lives next door.
Right.
So you got everybody else that offered 325, and that one guy offered 350. So that's an outlier.
Got it.
So you need to be careful that you're not going in and saying, well, he got 350, so then I'm going to price mine for 360 because it's been a month now, so appreciation.
Right.
And you keep pricing to the escalated price, you might end up hurting yourself. You need to price it to a point where you can maybe let it escalate.
Right.
And if it didn't escalate, it was never going to escalate at or even sell at the higher price.
I wouldn't
So
do
you're
anything.
better off to price it on the lower end, close to that comp. It's helping the comps for sure. If he priced at 3 and it escalated to 350, maybe you can go 310, 315, 320. But I wouldn't go necessarily 350 because you're not going to escalate the same.
You know what I learned? Just call Kathy Helbig. Just do whatever she says. 314-276-SOLD. 314-276-SOLD or KathyHelbigGroup.com. Good stuff.
Thank you guys.
750 KTR St. Louis.